Ladies and gentlemen, countries around the world are taking steps right now to ensure their own food supplies. They're stopping the exports of grains, of everything, in order to make sure they can feed their own people, but not the United States. No, we continue to export hand over fist to China. I'll come back to this article and this question. But look at this, just as one example. Beef exports to China were up 700% year over year. 7 times as much beef we're selling in November as we did last year. Even as President Trump today is signing executive orders that say basically that we're at war with China. Why are we allowing them to eat out this country's substance, even as the rest of the world locks down their food to protect it? Who is controlling the USDA and allowing this to happen? The USDA yesterday did finally admit what I covered on this broadcast a year ago when I had on a top 1% producer who said
that I just don't think we're fully getting the information, and there's a force and there's an energy that's just trying to give the impression that everything is okay. And we're a fine line between everything okay and below pipeline levels of grain in this country.
There are forces at work trying to hide the scale of the crop losses due to the extreme spring flooding of 19 and the record prevent plant. The USDA lied about the extent of those losses, and as a result, we have continued to sell food to China at suppressed prices until yesterday when the USDA finally said, yeah, it turns out all those beans that we said we grew last year, even with the flooding, yeah, we didn't. This was mostly due to a reduced estimate of last fall's harvest. So they're finally retroactively admitting we didn't have those beans. But now we've continued to sell everything we have to China. And when they admitted this, you can see, this is the year chart, but if you look at the monthly chart, the prices went vertical yesterday for soybeans and for corn. The grain markets went crazy when the USDA admitted we don't actually have this food left anymore. Here's the 1 week chart, spiking up yesterday, continuing today.
So it tastes good.
Other countries are protecting their food supply. Are we? The answer is no, we're not. And some force that evidently controls the USDA is allowing China to take everything we have right now. And this will land us in a world of hurt and starvation. This article is about Argentina, normally the world's second biggest corn exporter, about 15% of the world's export market, and they have halted their corn exports. We covered this previously, but we need to remind ourselves in light of the fact that now Ukraine and Russia have joined them. Here's Ukraine. Today, Ukrainian livestock and poultry producers associations have asked the government to limit the corn exports right now to prevent a shortage of animal feed. This is what we've seen now. I covered it in the smaller markets of Nigeria and Trinidad and Tobago, where they ran out of animal food and the poultry industry there has been decimated. They've been culling animals because they can't feed them. And I said, these are the smaller markets, but they are the canary in the coal mine for how this will play out as a global soybean shortage shakes up everything we know. It's happening. It's happening now. Ukraine's corn harvest was down sharply from last year. And as a result, livestock and poultry producers are saying, whoa, hold on to our grains. We gotta feed our animals. And in turn, we gotta feed our people. But not here in the US. In Russia, they've started restricting their exports of grains and oilseeds. Moscow, last week, in an effort to regulate and reduce food prices, Russia will stop the export of some grains and oilseeds, according to the GAIN report from the USDA. Wheat, rye, corn, sunflower seeds, and rapeseed also will be restricted. When? Now, the first half of 21, already in effect. through June. Global food trade is halting as nations realize what's going on, as South America's harvests are recognized. That drought there, the drought did not let up, and the damage is done. They are not getting a good crop. And as a reminder, China has geoengineering programs arranged that bring rain to an area larger than the surface area of India. That's how massive their geoengineering program is there. But somehow, humanity can't figure out how to do that in Argentina, even though this is literally now responsible for bringing the world food trade to a halt. So this is a deliberately engineered global food collapse. It would have only taken some rain to help this entire situation out. But no, it didn't happen. Because that's not in their interest. What they want is a collapse, a complete collapse of food. Argentina as well, very specific about why they're limiting their export. We read down here, much of their cereal crops, again, fed to livestock, that Argentinians, renowned for their love of meat, then eat. Depleting livestock herds because feed is unavailable would be unpopular, to say the least. Yeah, we need those animals to feed our people. But not here in the United States. We are not protecting our food supply. We are headed into a holodomor. They even say in the article, we should all be concerned about the reason why. Traders have started to realize what's going on here. We saw the charts of the prices of these commodities spiking vertical yesterday. In most cases, they continue to go up again today. Panic in these grain markets. And if South America stays dry, there's no telling how high these prices could go. We are already at record low stocks to use ratio. In other words, we're already running out. And yet, are we taking steps to protect our food supply? No, we're not. In fact, we're already selling next year's crop off to China. That's how thoroughly, how wholly we have been sold out here in this country. So yes, Trump is cutting off military financing to China with his executive order today, but we're still selling them all of our food, even next year's food. What is going on? Who is in control of this? Who is responsible for this? Some commentary goes ahead and mentions that the USDA is fudging the numbers, and as a result, what we're seeing now is going to be a lasting problem. This is more than a 2021 problem. These are shortages that we're entering into like we have never seen in this country before. But are we protecting our food supply? No. Again, we are not. In fact, in the name of wokeness and global warming, we're actually saying, let's stop buying soybeans from Brazil because of the deforestation there. The multinational food companies, again, Nestle, Unilever, McDonald's, Walmart, Tesco, have demanded to appease their environmentally conscious consumers, or just to do it. It's just because they want to do it. They want to starve us out. That is the agenda, that we stop buying soybeans from the Cerrado region of Brazil, which is responsible for 60% of their soybean crop. That's the number one exporter of soybeans in the world. But screw it, we don't need it. We want to save the rainforest, right? That programming is in deep at this point. We are in trouble now. And I spoke to a top 1% producer earlier today, and we were reminded of the illusion of superabundance.
I would think if there's some people in larger cities that have not access to anything other than what the local grocery store has to offer, I would be pretty nervous right now. But
yeah, it's a scary story you're telling there. It sounds a lot like what the Chinese in their great Chinese famine back in the 50s called the illusion of superabundance, where they just kept thinking they had more grains and they just kept exporting them, and at some point they went into that silo and it was empty and people started starving. Millions of people.
I cannot think of a better way to describe the American mindset. Do what you can do right now to prepare yourself for shortages.
You can see it led for the CCP to report excessive production because they wanted to be impressive, and so they just kept exporting. This is exactly the effect that the USDA's lying will have. Our prices have been subdued because of the USDA's lies, and we have continued handing over the food to China because of those lies. Who is responsible for the USDA's lies? Sounds like we're starting to get a pretty big picture that China has control over at least part of the USDA here, and that is allowing them to rob us of our food supply. And again, this is going to create a very bad situation here in the United States. Some of the observations as animal feed prices have already started rising in response to the increase in price in soybeans. One analyst here says, yeah, there's already less eggs and less chicks available right now. So due to the increase in feed prices, you should not expect more chicken meat anytime soon. We also have a smaller breeding herd. I covered that in a previous report. We have 6% fewer breeding pigs than last year, which means we'll have 6% less food than last year, and yet we are selling more pork than ever to China. We have a 10% smaller cattle being sent to the feedlots, and yet, as I mentioned earlier, we're selling 7 times the amount of beef we did last year to China. Are we protecting our food supply? Absolutely. You can see, I hope by now, clearly, we are not. And we need to be. Failing that, you need to be preparing for what I can only state is a catastrophic day of reckoning. As we finally hit the wall, run out of soybeans, the USDA is happy to say that we have plenty of beans in on-farm storage. I continue to hear from lots of producers and people that operate elevators and other facilities around this great nation that say the bean, it's not there. There is nothing left in on-farm storage. And as I've also covered before, there are no strategic reserves left in the United States. We liquidated those for dollars. We sold them off in 2008. And the remaining commodities were sold off. Since then, the trust, which replaced the strategic grain reserves, is now held in cash, invested in stocks and bonds. And you can read here, this is Wikipedia, unambiguously telling us, since it no longer holds any real food, the Strategic Grain Reserve of the U.S. could theoretically respond to local food crises outside the U.S., but not to a global one that affects the United States. We have been sold out, we have been had our substance eaten out, and we're about to crash into reality. Please start growing your own food right now. Start saving seeds from your garden and sharing those with your neighbor. I've talked at length in this channel. If you're new, welcome. I wish I had a more optimistic message tonight. But the reality is that we're in a world of hurt right now. And we all need to be producing as much food as you can right now. You can